Sup everybody, this is Karak with ACG and welcome to another Why video where you ask cool questions and I try to give you somewhat cool answers. As you guys have noticed, I haven't done one of these in a while, and that's because I've just been so busy, or, there's been other reasons to do different kinds of videos, and I do want to start these up again. These questions are ones that I've been given from YouTube and from Twitter and just anybody asking these questions, written down, sort of like Neil deGrasse Tyson, only much stupider. I haven't seen any of these questions, so this will sort of be off the cuff. Remember one thing, this is just me and my opinions of the industry or whatever personal questions you may ask. Let's begin. The first is Nordbergel. How is your beard so luscious? First of all, luscious? Don't know if you should have used that term. Anything else would have probably been a better term, and I'm not 100% sure. It's just basically I was born with a beard, and this is pretty much it. The next question, Craig Sniffer, why do you always wear a beanie? Well, a little bit like Cyclops. It's sort of like sunglasses. If I take it off, everybody else will be destroyed by my brain power. These are all going to be about weird stuff like that. Lovepox says, if you hate the Unity engine so much, why do you rate some of the games as a buy? So some people may think that that's sort of a baited question or a bad question or what have you, or even a wrong question, because obviously those two don't really match up all the time. But I think it's a good sort of jumping off point for us to discuss engines for a second. There are various different engines that you have out there, and they all have their own strengths and weaknesses. In particular, it's one of the reasons why you see companies such as Sony, Microsoft's done it, all of these different companies, Nintendo certainly has done it, but all these developers create their own when they can. One of the reasons why is because maybe they have a particular thing that they want to do in the game that they find that it would be better if they created it in-house so that the graphics engine, the gameplay engine, just the full process and software itself works in concert with what they're trying to deliver as an end package, whatever that may be, whether it may be a role-playing game, whether it be a first-person shooter with some unique element. Many times people will do that. Now, Unity is a little bit different in the fact that Unity, I would say, and most would agree, is one of the better when it comes to prototyping, getting something up and running great and fast and quick. However, it just so happens that when you look at what we have, when you look at the processors that we have, the multi-core processors we have versus the, faster, less number of cores many times, those kind of things, for whatever reason, at times Unity does have a problem with frame rate. Now, you could say that's because it's so easy to get something up and running that people don't work on optimization, and I'm absolutely sure, I know for a fact of at least one game where that is absolutely the case. It is 100% the case. Additionally, you may look at the situation where the engine just doesn't handle some processors in a certain way, or some overall speed of that the game wants to deliver versus what the processor and the GPU can deliver, and it just sort of gets muddled. It doesn't work as well as, let's say, Unreal or something like that. When it comes to Unity, just because some games we see seem to have some weird frame rate issue, it doesn't mean that we don't see the same thing on an Unreal game. It's just that Unity is one of those engines that has sort of come to the forefront of being, I guess I would say, more susceptible to these kind of things. Even among the development groups that you talk to, sometimes it's discussed, like, even if you mention it and somebody just wants to know, if we're going to use Unity, what are some of the positives and negatives we get out of that? And that's fine. It's fine to admit those things. What we want to see is we want to see people who make games and create games where their FPS target that they aim for is hit at a solid rate, even if it is 30. I know a lot of us would rather have 60 on everything, and I totally get that. But at the same time, what I would like to see is a solid anything, because even a variable 60 frames down to 45 up to 60 can look pretty trashy if it's done quite often. So there's various different elements for that. It's a good question, and it certainly is something that I look at when I'm looking at a game, trying to see if it's got frame rate issues. Maybe I will look at the engine, but overall, you won't see anything that I hate or like getting a different rating than anything else. It's just what the end product is, even though I may talk about it in podcasts and so forth. It's a good question, and it's certainly an issue that I think bears more discussion maybe in a podcast. Let's see. Help Me Try says, why do you think microtransactions are in the new Lord of the Rings game? Money. I think that we are looking at a situation where companies are testing to see just how much that they can get from the gamer. Now, We can discuss this on moral grounds and say, is it morally right? Is it morally not? But it is business where sometimes those things change. We can all pretend we're always on the high ground, great. Or we can pretend that we're always involved in skullduggery and we're always trying to get the most out of everybody in our personal lives as well. I think overall companies and people are in between most of the time. They're constantly trying to engage and find out what they can get away with, but also offer something so that a person feels like a happy customer versus one who maybe a year later feels burned. You know, that's something that a lot of people like to ignore when they talk about this. They like to pretend that a company doesn't remember that shit. They do. They want to track those things, and they do want people to feel satisfied, but they also, I mean, they're a company, right? And they want to make money. I hate the idea that microtransactions are in this game for various reasons. Most of them revolve around how they apparently interact with the different processes that go on in the title. Now, will that make an effect on the review? I don't know. It'll depend on how I play it and how it feels, because it's quite easy. I would say it's very easy, one of the easiest things to notice when something seems spread out for no reason. So it'll be more interesting to see like how those microtransactions really impact the length of the game, and if there's a feeling of grind rate versus a feeling of just exploration. And I think, and we can discuss this certainly on a separate video, but I think that would be a great thing to discuss, is grind rate versus, or the grind feel, whatever you may want to call it, versus the adventuring feel. And the two can be together, but most of the time they're separate. Most of the time you won't feel very adventure-y when you're grinding, because grinding has, I think for many of us, a feeling of going to the same thing over and over, where adventuring has more of a thought process of wanderlust, of I'm on my way, Tasselhoff barefoot, sorry, from Dragonlance, running around doing those kind of things and consistently seeing new stuff. So I think that's a really good question. I think it's something that, again, like the other one, bears out sort of in a podcast as a longer discussion. But it's sad, you know, I don't like to see these microtransactions. I've said this before. I really wish that microtransactions waited a little while so that those people who got into it could get into it, and that the game was created without those in place. I don't like it, but we'll see how it turns out. That's the most important thing. We'll see how it turns out. And as for the exact reason, honestly, no one's ever going to know, but personally, I just put it down to money. Let's see. Tiblet says, explain open back and close back headphones. Also, what's the difference between a headset and a headphone? That's actually a good question. What's the difference between a headset and a headphone? We'll start with that one. Headset and a headphone. It's very simple. Headsets and headphones. Headphones are really based around the audio that you're getting from the earpieces, from the actual speakers, where a headset usually has your ability to get your microphone, your voice, that kind of thing. And what happens is you really have, I guess, an economy and a sport class kind of situation there, where one maybe isn't so worried about exactly how accurate they sound because they're doing many things, or they're at least spreading that, spreading their overall focus across multiple things. And their actual desire is different. Many times a headphone, their main desire, and the main thing you'll hear them talk about when you go to their website, is the sound reproduction. But when you go to a headset, if you look closely, many times they will talk about comfort. They will talk about the features that they have. And that's really the easiest way to describe the two, is sort of an economy versus a sport class kind of situation. It doesn't mean you can't have a fast economy car, and it doesn't mean you can't have sort of a shitty sports car. You can. But that's the easiest way to describe them in a nutshell. There's some more finesse there that can be done, but right now I would say that that's probably the easiest way. Now, when you're talking about open and closed headsets, basically what happens, or headphones, what happens with those is when you have a pair here, you have either closed, where they have plastic or metal or whatever on the outside, and then you have open, where they're open and people can hear far more of the sound that you have on the headphones. What happens with an open set is they allow for a wider sound stage usually. Now, why I say usually is, well, there's various reasons. It would be very long, but what that really means is it feels more of a, I guess you would say more of a concert setting when you're using open. Usually, it feels a little bit more open when it comes to the right and left, a little bit wider. When it comes to closed, that is also an isolating kind of situation, where they are isolating you from outside sounds, and isolating outside sounds or outside people from hearing your music or your game or your adult video, whatever you may be watching. So they have a different sound quality as well. And it's really, I wouldn't say it's a battle, but I would say that you have a tremendous amount of argument between the two groups on which one is better. Personally, I don't think either one is better. I think that both, there are examples you could choose from open and closed back that both sound great in particular instances. Personally, all of mine but one are closed, but that's really no indication of what I like more. It's just that's sort of the way it is. And especially when you live in an environment where you're around other people, there are times where closed certainly does behoove you, because it's a little harder to hear what you're hearing. They don't have to listen to me doing editing or anything like that because they're closed off and that sound doesn't leak out. When it comes to any other element, there isn't really any. Comfort-wise, they're going to be the same. They usually don't change any of the actual form factor other than the outside. And again, that widens the sound stage, but at the same time, leaks sound out. Let's see. Lolder 101. What's up with Sony and Crossplay? That's a good question. I couldn't tell you exactly what it is. I know that Sony is more still in the tried and true Japanese style of I guess I would just say company management, even for the American group. This is something I've talked about when it comes to reviews and like how it sort of feels YouTubers are treated versus journalists or people who just do websites and don't have any video. I would assume that they want to cultivate and control exactly what happens in games, and they don't want any interaction with an opponent or a competitor. There's nothing really wrong with that. We've seen it in some sports teams where they've had to share the same stadium and they're never happy because they think somebody's going to be sneaking in and listening or for whatever reason. The same sort of goes here with crossplay. They don't want that data getting out. They don't want the connection whatsoever, because there's a lot of paranoia about, what information could be gleaned from a cross-play moment from a game, that kind of stuff. Or is our game not going to look as good because this game, maybe runs at a lower resolution but a faster frame rate or something we have actually seen occur occasionally on the Xbox. What about the Xbox One X? Maybe they don't necessarily want to merge those two. Microsoft's reaching out. This is typical when a competitor sees that they have a problem, which Microsoft has had issues in the past. So they're reaching out. This is one of the things they're trying to push. And we would see the same thing from Sony if they were in rough shape. They would try to reach out. It's typically what happens when the competitor in second or third place is trying to, get more of the fans behind them, is by doing these kind of things. Will we see them do crossplay in all games? No, but I would say that at some point we're most likely going to see crossplay happen more often, just simply because the developers want it. A lot of developers really do. They think that would be the best way, is if somebody has an Xbox and somebody has a PS4 and they're both friends, why shouldn't they be able to play the same game? And that's a big deal to a lot of developers, and it's a lot of wasted sales where somebody says, oh, I don't have a PS4, so we can't play together, instead of, I don't have a PS4, but I'm going to buy one, which is much rare. Let's see. Rockstar Lover. I assume this is going to be, it's going to be some kind of Rockstar question. Did you see the new concept art for Agent and the rumor that Bully 2 is next after Red Dead? So no, or yes, I did, but I guess I will say this. So we saw some concept art. There was some concept art that was leaked, and it looks like Agent isn't necessarily dead, something we've talked about many times on the channel. But I do want to talk a little bit about Bully, because the discussion was that, and the rumor was that Bully is basically second in line after Red Dead. And I can say this, Bully was most likely second in line after whatever they were working on before Red Dead with GTA, right? That means that what usually happens is somebody looks at it and decides they can't move forward with something at that time. They're looking at it and they're like, which one of these two do we want to move forward with? We want to move forward with Red Dead, not necessarily Bully. There could be various reasons for that. Perhaps their multiplayer scheme fits better with a game like Red Dead, which it certainly probably does with whatever their version of Shark Cards is going to be. In Bully, who knows what it could be. But I would assume that it's been looked at and worked on for a continual amount of time. We saw the same thing happen with Jade Empire 2, where there were leaks multiple times because people continued to work on it and continued to sort of jostle it around. That'll happen here. Now, when it comes to Agent, that one's a weird situation. As far as I understand, the connection between Sony and Agent and Rockstar actually is over now. I could be wrong on that, but I am almost sure that overall connection is over, and that's just Rockstar. Because I think that we got to remember, Agent was announced, or at least pseudo-announced, PS3 mid-life. Somebody can correct me on that. Mid-life or early life of the PS3, and then has just died multiple deaths. And The rumor was that it was some kind of agreement between Sony and Rockstar about maybe it had something to do with some of the extras that GTA 4 gave at Microsoft and Xbox. No one really knows. There's a lot of just different discussion about it. When it comes to Bully, you guys know I absolutely love Bully. I'm really, really impressed with just how well that game is held up. I would love to see Bully 2, but I don't necessarily see that these leaks are an indication of anything other than the status quo. It's just someone found out about the status quo, which is that they're being looked at. But right now, I'm sure they're focusing on Red Dead. And then after that, they're going to do what every development company does, what every publisher does, is they look at their IP list and they decide from that point on where they want to move forward and how it best improves the company's status. So anyway, that's it for me. I hope you guys like these. I'll keep these short. This one's just a couple minutes long, but feel free to send in questions. I'll always be looking at the YouTube channel, Twitter, that kind of thing. Discord, you can feel free to do so. You can pop in. We can talk. I can try to give you some answers. Also, make sure to watch the International Podcast because we talk about these things continually in those. And I've found that a lot of people don't know we do that podcast. And when they end up jumping in, it becomes their favorite thing, even above the reviews, which is pretty crazy. Well, actually, it's not crazy. There's 3 other really cool people on it. So maybe they're just like, thank God it's not Karak. Anyway, peace out and enjoy the rest of your week.